I shoot with the Sony ZV-E10 and I changed the kit lens to Sigma 16mm. I'll tell you 2 reasons why I bought the Sigma lens, and then, if you promise not to tell anyone, I'll share you my exact secret settings on the camera so you can up your video quality too. If you stick around till the end, as a bonus, I'll show you how I color grade my videos in Final Cut Pro and show you the before and after shots. It all started with me using the kit lens, this one. Which isn't actually that bad of a lens in my opinion. You can use this as your main lens if you want to and get great results with it. But here's the thing. I use my camera daily in sales meetings with customers and I got tired of a sharp and well-lit background. I don't want the customers to switch their focus from me to my background, and also I don't like the artificial effects of backgrounds in Teams or Zoom for instance. So the 3.5 aperture in the kit lens was not doing it for me, but I found the solution in the Sigma lens. It has a 1.4 aperture, which means that the lens lets more light in, so I can have a darker background, and also it gives this great natural, in my opinion more professional looking blurry background. Now I don't have to worry about the background anymore and I feel more confident in sales meetings. The second thing is that I don't actually have a big room as a home office / YouTube studio. So I really like the 16mm focal length on the kit lens for my room. In my opinion, that's the best focal length for me. I can sit on the computer and be on sales meetings and I can be seen on camera in a perfect way on the other end of the meeting. For this YouTube stuff, I watched videos that said that the 16mm is also kind of the so-called industry standard for talking head videos. And I agree about that. The ZVE10, the Sigma lens, and the settings I'll show you next makes my videos look basically just the way I imagined how my video should look like. But before we go to the settings, there are links in the description for the gear I use in my YouTube setup, like the camera and lens, if you want to check them out yourself. They are affiliate links, so if you decide to buy something, I get a small commission, but it won't cost you any extra. It helps me out. And while you're down there looking for the links, you might as well hit like and subscribe, since it also helps me out. Thank you. Now let's go to the settings. There are a few important settings to get the most out of the camera. First, let's be sure that you're in manual mode, so you have the most control over the image. Let's first go to the menu and go to tab 2, page 1, and make sure we are in manual exposure mode. Then let's check the exposure settings first. The exposure consists of 3 main settings we need to check: aperture, shutter speed and ISO. First, we have aperture. This tells us how wide open the lens is. The wider the aperture is, meaning lower f-stop, the more light it lets in. Sigma can do 1.4, which I consider a low value or wide open, and that's what I use. Then we have shutter speed. This is how quickly the shutter opens and closes. Fast shutter speeds lets in less light. I use the 180-degree rule, meaning that the shutter speed is double the frame rate. I shoot 4K with 24 frames per second because the Sony ZV-E10 can do it, so I set my shutter speed to 1/50th of a second. But for the screen capture to work, I had to change the settings to 1080p and 30 FPS as you can see. Third, we have ISO. This tells us how sensitive the camera is to light. The higher the ISO value, the higher the sensitivity and less light is needed for the camera. But it's advisable to keep the ISO setting as low as possible to minimize graininess and noise. I try to shoot videos at ISO 100, so the overall image is quite dark, but that's what I aim for. After the exposure settings, let's make sure that the focus settings is what we want. In the menu, let's go to tab 1 and page 4. Let's choose the focus mode to be continuous AF or autofocus. And let's have the focus area at wide. I use wide focus area because it lets me move a bit on the camera and still keep me in focus. Now it's time for the white balance and picture profile I use. Let's stay on tab 1, but go to page 8. I set my white balance manually to match my key light, which is set to daylight temperature at 5600 Kelvin or 5600 K. So that's what I set in the camera also. Let's scroll down to picture profile. I use profile 10 that I modified. You could basically modify any one of the profiles. I just chose profile 10 at random. I set the gamma to Cine 2, but you can of course experiment with these if you like. I have the color mode set to Pro, and lastly I bumped up the saturation to +5. But many times I play around with the saturation depending on the day. Last setting we're going to look at is how I set my key light. I turn on the zebra function on the screen and set it to 70%. Basically I chose the 70% because I read that it should be a good setting for my skin tone, and I set the key light brightness so that I just get the zebra on my face, which is the part I want to light up with my key light. There you have all the settings that will improve your video quality. Go try these out and let me know down in the comments if they work for you. And now, because you're still sticking around, let's jump to Final Cut Pro and I'll show you how I color grade the footage. So, it all starts with the adjustment layer. I usually put it to the whole video, but now let's do just one clip. And I actually made a preset called Tommy MLCG1. Let's not use it now. I'll show you from the beginning what I do. It all starts with the Final Cut preset called Cooler Muted Lifted. I send that to the adjustment layer. I don't touch that preset at all. I just go to the color wheels and then I bump up the global brightness and global saturation. Then also I lower the brightness in the highlights and I bump up the saturation. Then in midtones I just lower the brightness. I might lower the saturation. Then in the shadow section I just lower the saturation. Then one important thing is the temperature. I set it to 6000. I don't know why, I just found out that it looks good. Now let's add my preset and see how it looks. It's almost identical. There's some small changes that could be done in the color wheels, but it's good enough. Now, next up is the before and after clips. And here is the image without color grading, straight from the camera with the settings we looked at together. And here is the color graded results like you already saw in this video. Let's do it one more time. Here's the video again without color grading, straight from the camera to QuickTime, and here is the color graded video. Hopefully you found this video helpful and informative. See you later.